So whenever a group, chapter 4 group is ready to go, you can go ahead.
Okay, Lori, do you want to start us off, and I'll just click through as you need me to?
Sure.
Okay.
So I was going to introduce Colleen and Angel, and my name's Lori, and we basically work together on this, and we split up individual slides. So we'll just be kind of chiming in as we go here. The first, I don't know how to. You want to go ahead and switch slide?
Yeah.
And now I'd like to hide the, is there a way to hide this? Oh, there it is. Let me see if I can hide that. Okay. Research supports that there are significant gains in learning using these strategies, cues, questions, and graphic organizers. The strategies are easy to use, and they help activate the prior knowledge and help students construct new meaning from their learning. Go ahead and change slides.
Okay, so what are these strategies? Cues and questions tend to be things that the main purpose is activating prior knowledge. Cues tend to happen more at the beginning of a lesson, and they're hints to students about upcoming content. They help students activate their background knowledge, but then also provide a brief introduction to what's coming in the lesson. And then questions can kind of take place throughout the lesson, or at least that was what I gathered from the reading. And then advanced organizers are just graphic organizers, but they're presented in advance of the lesson, and they help students to kind of orient themselves to the new content. And like I mentioned, they're used before the lesson to set the stage for learning.
So what learning theories does this relate to? Next slide. The behaviorism theory suggests that learning is acquired through conditioning, and we as teachers try to find the stimulus that will elicit the learning that we anticipate, and we repeat the stimuli in forms of routines, making the result of the learning environment more predictable. So learning and behavior changes can be a product of reinforcement, and these strategies do that for us. So in this chapter, the stimulus might be a cue or a question, and as we teachers gain more experience, we start to develop what we know the response might be to that, so it helps us develop the questions that we want to ask. Next slide. The social cultural theory and constructivism theories suggest that learning is built on prior knowledge, as we mentioned, but that new content can be interwoven with the prior knowledge content. And what I found, and you probably have too, is that students really like it when there's something that they recognize from before. So when you start to talk about something and they remember something from before, it helps them engage in the learning. You can use the advanced organizers in a group or individually. Next slide.
Okay, so we're going to start with cues and questions. Cues and questions were kind of grouped together as a similar strategy in the reading in the chapter, and there were 4 guidelines. So focus on what's important, use explicit cues, and then 2 types of questions they focused on were inferential questions and analytic questions. So we'll be going through these 4 classroom practices one at a time. So the first was to focus on what's important. It can be tempting when you're trying to activate prior knowledge to think about what will be most interesting or catchy and kind of stray from the learning objectives. I know that I have done that at times. So this section was really emphasizing that we need to choose our questions carefully. based on what prior knowledge we want to activate and what is our learning objective. And if we can find a way to combine the interesting and the important and keep it focused, then that's kind of the sweet spot. And the example given in the text of this was Mr. Esperanza when he, asked his students to think about the lottery, and they kind of strayed off topic and started talking about what they would buy if they won the lottery. And then he was able to make his question more specific in regards to probability and his learning objective, and it was much more successful. And then the second guideline was to be explicit. And so the intent of using explicit cues is to activate prior knowledge. This can be a relevant personal experience, a situation a student is encountered, to really help them connect with the learning. The tips for this strategy were to really be direct and to try to focus on kind of just pointing students in the right direction. And like I had mentioned before, this is something that would most likely take place at the beginning of a lesson. Sometimes we think that this needs to be complex, but it can really be as simple as discussing the learning objectives for a lesson or a unit, providing a list of questions that students will be able to answer as a result of a lesson, and even something as simple as just telling them what they really need to pay attention to or what they're looking for as they read or view material. And then the third was asking inferential questions. So the purpose of the inferential question, which can be used throughout the lesson, is to, one, activate their prior knowledge, two, help them create a framework for new learning, and then as they're doing those things, it kind of, when you're inferring, you're taking your prior knowledge and you're combining it with the evidence you see either in whatever media you're viewing. So you're having to consider that missing information, and it requires students to kind of engage in a deeper way rather than just asking a really basic question. And then in the text, it has some examples of inferential questions. So they're typically focused on these 4 concepts, and I will kind of let you guys read through those. But an example they gave was if you were teaching a history lesson and you were focused on some sort of event, you could ask students to consider who might usually be involved in that type of event, and then they're having to activate their prior knowledge about that concept. They're having to kind of fill in the gaps with any information that is missing, and they're kind of starting to move in the direction of what that lesson might be about. And then the last guideline was asking analytic questions, and I think Lori, you had this slide.
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, I can go ahead and present it. So it says to ask these types of questions to get students to think more deeply. And the 3 types of analytic questions were analyzing errors, constructing support, and analyzing perspectives. So one example given in the text was analyzing errors. So, and the text said that when you're asking a student to analyzing errors, it really requires the student to think deeply because they might have to identify the use of faulty logic, a focus on a person rather than the issues, weak references. So it really requires deeper thinking was kind of the point of these types of questions, and get students to engage in a deeper way. And then I think this was Angel.
Yes. Lesson plan ideas. I am a high school Spanish teacher, and these were some ideas that I had for during the first week of school if you're reviewing concepts from their previous year. So the objective is students will be able to correctly form a sentence in Spanish. So if the students are grouped, each group can be given an index card with the subject pronoun written on it. The teacher will hold up a photo of an individual or an index card with a proper name on it, such as Rebecca, and each group will select the subject pronoun that's listed on their index cards that are on their desk, and one of them will hold up the matching subject pronoun that goes with the picture. Then the teacher will hold up cards with different conjugated verbs on them. Each group will select the subject pronoun that matches the card shown. Finally, once the subject pronoun and conjugated verb have been matched, then the group can come up to the board and finish the sentence in Spanish, continuing the sentence in Spanish, writing it on the board.
All right.
Screen again here. Hang on just a second. Okay. So when teachers are developing graphic organizers, the most important thing is that it helps the focus become clear for the students, but also we have to be sure that our focus is clear. So we're going to use our objectives or our goals, and then make sure that the graphic organizer brings those concepts together. Next slide. The advanced organizers, particularly ones with tables or charts, help students see how things fit. If they can see the component parts initially, they can get the bigger that helps them get the bigger picture. And something I've found with using the graphic advanced organizer is that especially if they have it before class, they can see that they can see how the pieces fit. They can kind of check in with what they know and what they don't know. And then it relieves them of the little bit of the anxiety when they're going to take notes in class, and especially for college students when they might not have time to read the whole book or whatever before the lesson starts. So next slide. And I took this quote from someone named Dees, but he said that the true power of the advanced organizer is giving students so that they know what to look for when new information is added. So it takes away the element of surprise. And if they're wrestling with anxiety or time constraints, the advanced organizer is very helpful. Next slide. And this, there's not really anything that's difficult to understand about an advanced organizer, except that sometimes we think about it being only in the beginning, only in advance of the lesson. But if it's brought to the lesson, then the learning activities can be integrated within that. So it could be used as a guide for group work, or it could also serve as a way to keep notes for a lesson, and it also can serve as a study guide for students. And I just made a note that outside of our teaching, graphic organizers are used quite a bit in everyday life, like when you get a new washing machine or some kind of a new gadget, you're trying to find out, you go to the back and look at the troubleshooting guide. That's basically, a graphic organizer that takes, what the symptom is and the problem, and gives you, in table format, things to look for to help fix your gadget. So they're used all the time. They're, used outside of education quite a bit, and instruction manuals, and even in corporate worlds to let people know how a corporation is set up, what departments are encompassed in what areas. So it's kind of cool. Next slide. So this slide and the next slide, I chose to make 2 slides for the same information. So you can give the same kind of choice to your students if you want to give them we're going to be talking later about the non-linguistic representations, but you could give them a graphic organizer like this and let them fill in, you could give them something and they could fill in information below. Or if you want to take a peek at the next slide real quick, and then we'll go back one. So go to the next slide if you would, Colleen.
Yep.
So this one, is a little overwhelming for some types of learners. It's quite wordy, but if you were to look at this, if this were the topic of a big chapter, let's say, if a student were to be able to take this and look at what page things are found on, and a brief explanation of what type of an organizer it is, and then maybe down at the bottom, if what they're most interested in is when would I use this strategy, or when would I use this organizer, they can get that all in chart form. And go back to the other one. So, but this, if words are overwhelming to people, like sometimes they are for me, I kind of like to see the pictures and then, write notes on it if I need to. So the expository is a good one to use if more detail is needed. It can be either written or verbal. The narrative one is a great one for if you want to tell a story to get people interested in what the context or the meaning of what they're going to learn. So a video, but also some of us, as teachers, are great storytellers, and students really like that. So that's one way to have a graphic advanced organizer. And then skimming and scanning. The thing that I like most about this is that it gives choices to the students. So, like I said before, let's say they didn't have time to read everything about what we were going to be learning, but if at least they looked through the bold headings and looked at some of the tables in the chart or in the book, and maybe given themselves some background, and the scanning is one that if they don't read the whole thing, or they can read the whole thing later, but it gives them a choice of where to start. So in dental hygiene, a lot of the procedures that we do are procedures for, step by step by step. And I thought, well, scanning wouldn't work very well for us. But then the more I read about it, it's good to see, for the students to see what the end product is before they start. Just like with anything, starting with the end in mind is sometimes a great way to go. So, so if we have a procedure that's step by step by step, if they go to the end and see what the finished product is, sometimes that helps. So giving your students a choice of being able to scan and read what they're interested in first, that would be great. And next slide. And one more. So before I knew what a graphic organizer was called, I had made I made one of these for my students. And I don't know, can anybody see that, or is everybody able to see that in any detail, or not too well?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. So in the dentistry, you can see the visuals. I put the pictures of the units for the students, and they have to learn 5 different types of ultrasonic units. And when they go in and see each of these, they all kind of look the same to them. So the pictures help them identify, plus all the tips that are used for each unit. But when we did this lesson, this was given to them in advance, and I asked them to complete about 60 to 70% of it, letting them know that it was okay that it not be completely finished by the time they came to class. And then we said that when they learned about each one individually during demonstrations, they could add to their notes. And some of the things that were kind of cool, and I anticipated it in advance, but I wanted them to see the similarities and the differences in the units. So when they put check boxes by, it'll ask how many active sides does the tip have, and the answer is 4 usually, or 2. So they can pair up how many active sides and then pair it up with with the picture, and they can use this when they're going to go use that unit. We rotate through units, and so they might end up in a cubicle with a unit that they haven't used before, so they take this out and they can kind of help themselves get oriented to how it operates. But something like there's a certain side of ultrasonic tips that you never want to use because it's a sensitive part of it. So if someone's using it on your teeth, you might have felt that before. But if they know that every single one of those across the board has a check mark, they know that with none of those machines can you use that side of the tip. So it's just kind of like a reinforcement. So that was a good example of something that we use in our context. So I think that's it for me.
Okay, so using these strategies with today's learners, I was just giving examples of how they could be implemented in the class. So number one, focus on what's important. Example, students can play a review game of Kahoot to activate prior knowledge. I know that I've done that with my students and they enjoy it. Number two, use of explicit cues. For Spanish, I know that we've used illustrated pictures. You would have a scene or a place, and then the students would write a detailed description of the picture in as much detail as possible as a story starter in Spanish. Number three, ask inferential questions. Again, the example that I gave was in a Spanish class, the teacher may say, in Spanish, of course, but what is the significance of Cinco de Mayo? And this would give the students an opportunity to explain or expound on that cultural concept more so than just giving them a fill-in-the-blank type of sentence. And number four, ask analytic questions. Example, ask open-ended questions in Spanish that will require higher level thinking, such as ¿Qué hiciste durante la vacación de verano?, which is what did you do during the summer vacation, so that the students would not just, give 1 or 2 word answers. They would have to expound on it in more detail.
And then we really were just listing some of our resources, and we're able to take questions if there are any.
That was really nicely done. And you guys really took the piece that we talked about last week with incorporating the theory into it, and also incorporating some real examples that people could maybe take a bite of and use to their advantage in their classroom, and incorporated those into your presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, now the next group. Are you ready to go? Who is starting with that? Am I wrong? I thought there was...
Yep, I believe Mike is supposed to be starting with our group.
Hey, Mike, I'm going to unmute you. Or can you unmute yourself?
No. Sorry, I've totally forgot I was muted.
I do it all the time. All the time. So don't feel bad.
Because I just kept talking and I had no clue that I was muted. So can you guys see that?
Yes.
Or not?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a way to make it bigger or present? Maybe that?
Yeah, if you use present, it makes it bigger.
Okay.
Or you can just work with it as it is right here. It's fine either way.
Are we good with that? All right.
I think everybody can see most of it. All right, go ahead and take it away then.
All right, I'm going to start us out. So what is it and why? Let me go back to the first slide here. So we had non-linguistic representations, and I know the last group kind of touched on that briefly about non-linguistics. So this is myself, Mike Taluso, Trisha, and Anne-Marie. So I'm going to start us out. All right. Non-linguistic representation, it is information stored via memory in 2 ways, by words and images. And I know the last group touched on those images. What is non-linguistic? There are 5 different categories. creating graphic organizers, which the last group talked about, and I will touch on a little bit, making physical models, generating mental pictures. I can't see what it says. Creating pictures, illustrations, and pictographs, and engaging in I can't say that word, kinesthetic activity. So why is this important? It represents knowledge as imagery, because sometimes people can see stuff and they can learn better that way. So like I started doing ship shopping. Basically, I shop for other people and I know what certain things look like, so it's easier for me to look for those certain things because I see the picture in the app or I've seen the picture before, so it helps me to go back to previous knowledge and I see the image and then I can get what they need. So it's better able to process, organize, and retrieve information from memory. Like I said, I've seen like what Nestle looks like. I've seen what Captain Crunch looks like, stuff like that. I know what eggs look like. So is a way for students to enhance their learning and achievement. Graphic organizers can be used as a tool for summarizing and identifying similarities and differences. And they can also be used as advanced organizers, which the other group kind of touched on the graphic and advanced, and represent learning from generating and testing hypothesis. All right, next slide. So these are types of graphic organizers the book talked about. There's descriptive.
Mike, it's not sliding your slides for us. Is it showing the right slide
What's that?
for you? Is it showing the right slide for you?
Yes. What slide is it showing for you?
It's still on the front page for us.
Oh, do you see the second slide?
No.
Okay.
Sorry about
Could
that.
somebody else in the group maybe share? And maybe that will work. Sorry about that. I had no clue. Sorry.
That's okay. That's why I stopped you.
Trisha or Anne Marie. I didn't hear what you said.
I can try. I'm not sure exactly how to do that.
Okay.
Okay.
If you have it open on your desktop, at the
Okay.
bottom where it says screen, share screen, there's a little green box with an arrow up. If you click on that, then it should allow you to select it. Can you?
All right.
Okay, so if you want to go to the slide that you were on.
Yep. If you can go to slide 2.
Okay.
Sorry about that. All right. Now you guys can kind of see what I was talking about. So
Can we make them bigger?
I can't do anything. That's Anne Marie. She would have to make it bigger. Present.
Awesome,
All right.
thank you.
Can you guys all see it now?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Sorry about that. I had no clue.
Not
I just
your
kept
problem.
talking and talking.
I know, that's why I stopped,
All right.
because I figured out finally that you were changing slides and we didn't know that.
And I had no clue either. So, but all right. Quickly, just non-linguistic representation. I know the other group talked about organizers. It's information stored by words or images. There are 5 representation strategies: creating graphic organizers, making physical models, generating mental pictures, and then pictures, illustrations, and pictographs, and engaging in kinesthetic activity. Why is it important? It represents knowledge as imagery. And like I was saying earlier, I use pictures to help me find different things when I'm doing my ship shopping or just other things. You see certain things and you recognize it, and it can help you to retrieve that information from memory. Graphic organizers can be used as a tool for summarizing, identifying similarity and differences, and they can also be used as advanced organizers and for representing learning from generating and testing hypotheses. And like I said, the other group kind of talked about the advanced organizers as well. All right, next slide, please. if you go down, it should be in your lower left-hand corner.
Okay, on mine, it's showing the next
Yeah,
slide.
it's showing the graphic organizer slide that says descriptive time sequence.
Oh, yep, sorry. I didn't realize you moved it already. Okay, now we're good. All right, so these are types of graphic organizers the book talked about. There's descriptive. They help students learn cognitive organization skills, like to give description. Time sequence that comes with history. So if you ever see timelines and stuff like that, and which historical events happen and when. Process and cause and effect. They describe how events affect one another. Like we talk a lot about cause and effect. This happens because of this and that episode. Arrange data about specific events. And then generalization and principle. They organize the information into general statements with supporting details. And then concept is organizing information around a word or phrase that represents the entire classes or categories of, can't read that bottom part. What is it? Sorry. Oop, hold on. Thought I had it. Nope. All right. Still can't see it. People, places, things, or events. There we go. There we go. I can kind of see it. All right, next slide, please. All right. So these are some research results that the book talked about. Several studies support recommendation that teachers explicitly teach students how to use non-linguistic representation and promote the use of these strategies as a way to enhance their learning and achievement. Because we all learn in different ways, so I think it's good to use different methods to teach. And a 2010 study found the impact of using can multiply when it's used in combination with other strategies. Like if you're using pictures along with words, it can help to deepen and give a better knowledge for the students. Graphic organizers can be used as tools as well as identifying similarities and differences. And if you see something happening like in a graphic organizer, another one could be like a Venn diagram too. You can see the similarities and differences between things. So that is a way of using non-linguistic representation to help advance the knowledge of the students. All right, and I am done with my slide. Who's going next? So take it away.
Okay, I'm gonna have to ask you guys to do something horrible. I apologize. We ran over with the first presentation, and so this is going to kick us off in about 3 minutes. I'm going to ask you all to end the meeting, leave the meeting, and then enter back in on the link so that we can finish their presentation.
All right.
Okay, so everybody's going to go out and then come right back in. I'm sorry.